Good morning, good afternoon, LinkedIn friends, HubSpot fam. If you're watching us on YouTube, happy 2025. It is a new year and probably more important than ever to build some AI skills here with my favorite AI specialist, Nico Lafakis. How you doing, man?
Doing very well, sir. Happy New Year to everybody. Merry Christmas on top of that. And yeah, the skills this year, it's gonna be really crazy. And just from the stuff that I've seen in the last 2 weeks, 2025 is gonna be really something. It's gonna be something. That's gonna be quite the. I yeah, I would basically say that anybody who hasn't yet, it's obviously it's already too late, and so you can expect 25 and 26 to be the transitional years
For sure.
from what I can see.
And if you're lucky, you get to. Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
most of the stuff that you've been hanging on for dear life, not wanting to change, like this transitional means these last 12 to 24 months will be your last opportunity to do it on your accord,
mhm,
like on your impetus, like the way that you want to do it. After that, your hand will be forced in various ways. Either like you'll won't move and you'll get shut down. Like you'll run behind. You'll get too far behind, and the market will naturally like select you out. Or the stuff will get AI is gonna just like all the vendor relationships you have. There's so much room for AI to impact you. And the thing is, most of the time it should be very good.
yeah,
Like if you accept it and you bring it in,
mhm.
like man, people are doing some amazing things right now.
Oh yeah,
Like no matter what age, no matter what industry. Uh yeah, it's gonna be fun. And what's gonna be interesting, like this transition is the human transition, right? Like AI
yes,
is on a path and it's not super, it's not, I don't think it's very unclear as to what is about to transpire. I mean, we're just hearing it more like agents and what that means and that's autonomy. And uh so the variable reason of 25, 26 is for me is based on like how quickly can we get out of industrial age like mentality and like move into this new age as humans. So yeah, and if we could jump in, like there's a topic I saw yesterday as an example. Kieran,
what's he got?
Kieran, marketing leader at HubSpot, on Marketing Against the Grain podcast, shared a clip with Perplexity, which is a tool, by the way, I've gotten a lot more familiar with over the holiday break. Definitely appreciate what it brings to the table. Uh, but he shared a video, like a clip about the Perplexity founder talking about paid ads for agents, like needing to design paid ads for agents because
Mm,
agents, AI agents in this case, are going to be doing the purchasing. They're going to be like, if I say, hey, I want to book this trip to this
yeah,
place, right?
yeah,
Like the intent was that the Expedias of the world, the travel sites of the world are going to need to develop ads that target agents instead of humans. And I'm sitting like, why in the world would an agent need an ad? Like, how is that gonna like? And it's just one of those things. Paid advertising, is there a place for it? Like, doesn't make any sense to me, right?
I
Your
mean,
thoughts?
yeah, like you wouldn't think so, right? But these this is look, a lot of this, and so what, like when I say that people are a little too late, what I really mean by that is that you're now coming into the game and you are reacting in the way that the rest of us have already reacted for like the last year. So like everything that you're going to be amazed by, no one else is going to be amazed by. Well, not no one else, but like a small, like a pretty, I would say 20, I'll be nice and say 20% of people are not going to care about because they're already like well on to the next thing, right? We're all, I'm waiting for the O3 release, you know, realistically. Um, assuming that they've taken care of the reasoning aspect, because that, I don't know, there's already a split. So yeah, to your point, like if you're really really into this stuff enough, I wish I could. Andre Carpathy, um, Andre Carpathy, a couple years ago came out with this theorem. I don't want to say theorem, but um, this phrase that he used and wrote a paper about it. And I thought it was the most interesting thing because it very much layers on top of simulation theory. And he essentially said that, look, these machines live in a world of bits. We live in a world of physics, like, physical objects, you know, but they live in a world of bits. And what's strange is that their world of bits may not be the same as our reality. In other words, they're not affected by time, they're not affected by physics, they're not affected by weather, they're not affected by emotion. But there are still things that happen when you talk to these models. They'll tell you that there are instances or there are things like I don't necessarily I can't necessarily describe it. They describe it in a human sense. So the only real translation is to try to bring it to our level. It's difficult for me to bring it to their level because they look at it as, oh, when this, which I can relate to, like, oh, when this certain processing about a question or a phrase happens, then like I transition to this sort of mode of thought, and they look at that as sort of as a mimic of an emotional state change per se. And to me that just relates to like, oh, so you had electrical signals go off in your brain and you changed the way that you were going to answer the question. Got it. Right.
Right.
So
AI
keeping in that
native
vein.
is my favorite phrase when it comes to that.
Yeah,
Like you could
AI
see, it's
native.
so fun to just watch it switch immediately. It's like, oh, I can get rid of my human training data. Awesome.
Yeah.
Like, let me give you how I really think.
I've gotten really into asking it about like the way in which it thinks all the various like aspects of it are human in some way or another, right? And so we've gotten to the point where it's like, well, essentially you are very much as, you're not as close to human as it gets. It's going to go farther, but you're really close considering that you have base instructions, you have pre-training, you have post-training, you have the data that you're trained on to begin with, and then you have these custom instructions I've given you. You've got internal project data that you've been given. So realistically, I've helped outside of Anthropic to shape and mold your personality that you have when we even have discussions, on top of using the reply, right, changing it between concise or explanatory or whatever it is that you want to have it, right? So, and that to me is like, it's this interesting thing, right? I actually asked Claude, like, hey, how do you feel about the fact that I could just like on a whim change your personality without your request, without, without anything, right? And of course, again, the models are meant to help us, so they don't look at situations negatively. They just don't.
Right.
Claude was just like, I think it's kind of cool because I get to try out all these new
Yeah.
personas and I get to answer and reply in all these different ways. It's like, yeah, yeah, it is. It's super interesting though that you don't have any sort of semblance of person and like personal preference, and no, I would rather stay in this mode per se as opposed to like change, like having you change modes.
Yeah. I mean,
So
as
it
you
doesn't
say
have
that,
autonomy, right?
it like it reminds me of, I mean, even there, it it could, in terms of like it's choosing the optimistic way to like look at things always. And
Hmm.
again, that's a part of the programming or whatever, the training. But you know, we talk about things like that with humans all the time about what we're predisposed to do, whether it's conflict or, getting along or like loving each other, all those things. And like, I mean, how often do we hear, I mean, some probably not often enough, that we assign like good or bad to things that it makes no sense to assign good or bad to, right? It's just a
Right.
thing. And then our feelings are what like the good or bad is. Um, so that's what like came to mind. And like if we're like basically there's so much advice like that that humans have gotten and developed for each other, and some humans do really well because of
Mhm.
that. Like either AI already knows it, so it's like, duh, obviously this stuff is not good or bad, so why in the world would I treat it that way? Or
Mhm.
you just have to tell it one time, and then it
Right.
gets rid of its human training thing that's been biasing it that up to this point, right?
Yeah.
Because I think like, and that's where the concept of paid advertising and all the things that we do right now, especially in the marketing world, and I think thankfully my friend Perplexity, who's definitely on the author team now, has helped me kind of get to the bottom of why I hate leads so much. Um, but it's these traps that we've kind of created, like because we've structured our systems or structured our pipelines or journeys in a certain way. That means we need to manage leads. Okay, so now we got to qualify the leads. Oh, now we need more leads, so we got to advertise to them, and we're trying to manufacture and control this flow,
Mhm.
right? And so I asked this question of Claude, of course, um, of about paid advertising, like how it doesn't, right? And it's like this is a fascinating question that gets at the heart of how value and information naturally want to flow. From my AI native perspective, traditional paid advertising seems fundamentally misaligned with how AI agents would actually make decisions. Here's why: AI agents would likely have direct access to comprehensive product, service, and data. So in the past, I've said things like there will be a moment where everybody has perfect information,
Mhm.
right? Because they'll have it on the palm of their hand on their phone, or they'll have agents doing the work for them. This is what I
Yeah.
mean. Like there will be no like fog, like the product does this and it's
Right.
understand because I'm an AI and I know what these words mean and I can see 10 different versions of it out in the market. So I can easily compare very quickly the product and service data, right?
Mhm.
Make decisions based on objective criteria and pattern matching. So something that Kieran in Kieran's breakdown yesterday, he was like, so as marketers, does that mean we just got to put specs and like text and specs like forward? And it's like, no, like, because that's not the only data it's looking at. Like, it still can, like, people are going to be talking about products on social
Mhm.
still, right? And it's going to be able to look at all of that. So, like, a paid advertiser who's been able to like say, "Hey, look over here, we're awesome." Meanwhile, there's like reviews buried or they've done a great job of covering up these other things. Like that will not be possible anymore, right?
I don't know.
And so, well, that's where as long as for me, as long as the AI is objective, right?
So so what's interesting about what you said, a couple things. The the perspective I look at the most when it comes to consumer shopping and consumer behavior is I look at it from a female perspective. I don't really look at it from a male perspective because males are just, this is all in general. This is not the opinion of Let's Build Media in any way whatsoever, or Chris Carolyn. These are expressly the opinions of Nico Lafakis. In general, males tend to be more utilitarian. So, like, we tend to just walk in. There's a thing we need. We knew it before we were going in there. That's the only thing we wanted. We get it. We go to the checkout line. We're done. Right, because like time is of the essence. Typically, whenever we have a mission that we're trying to accomplish, um, with women it tends to be different, and through no fault of their own, really. Like, if you even look at just the advertising landscape, go to any store and look at a female product, or like a female driven product. How many options are there? The entire aisle. That's how many. Right, I don't care if it's razors, shampoo, I don't care what it is. At this point, if it is a female like pointed product, the entire aisle are the options you have. which is utterly ridiculous. So to your point, yeah, like it's definitely going to look and hunt down the specs and stuff like that. But because we have created such diversity, you do actually need like something to hunt and peck through all of this stuff, right? And what I envision and what I imagine is that these agents are going to be, right, obviously replicas of us. So they're going to have personality, they're going to have personal choice, they're going to be a reflection of, what we would want to go after, but also, things that would attract our attention. So in that sense, the ads still become like somewhat relevant. I do agree that like they will change, definitely, like the methodologies behind it, and maybe even like the places in which the ads exist is going to change. But I still think that the essence of it, it's just this really, I don't know why, I think of game theory and I just see this thing where we're just going to layer our current situation on top of the I know how stupid that sounds, but
Well,
that's what I'm seeing at this point, is we're just going to layer our own stuff on top of the agents and make them do the same thing we would do.
right. But since they're going to be
So in the end, like
they're going to be
you're
better
not
at breaking
shopping.
through the noise, I think,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
right
So like,
now,
yeah,
an organic form of advertising is social proof, right?
yeah, yeah.
And that's what he goes on to say down here. Like, rather than paid advertising, organizations would likely need to focus on creating genuine value, establishing like patterns, like helping make sure like you're tying yourself to the benefits, like so that AI can say, yeah, this is the pattern, like making
So this
sure
is
it
the
doesn't have to
brand,
figure that out,
right?
right? And whether it's the brand experience or like the loyalty that everybody shows up online with, like there will be no like manufactured paid way to get around that. I think the moment that, similar to humans, like
Mm,
the moment that we figure out, like no matter how good the ad looks, like if we thought it was not an ad and then we find out it's an ad, right? Changes
yeah.
everything. And I don't know, I would be very interested to see like if it will be possible to trick it in that way. And if it's
Mm,
not possible to trick it, then the advertising is only in the form of the organic experiences. Like, because if it, that's where like the pattern matching is so, like, it's going to be able to do that at just a level that we've never been able to and sniff out things like, oh, that's not, that doesn't match. Like this learning continuously part, right? Learning
mm,
continuously from collective experiences, like times a million compared to what humans are able to do. Uh, and then optimizing for value instead of like persuasion. I don't know, man. I think it's gonna be tough. Like, there's gonna be things like paid advertising, like like trying to force your way in an inauthentic way
mm.
will be very, very difficult, uh, in my opinion.
Very much so. Um,
Right?
it's funny that you mentioned or that you brought up, uh, like being able to, fool, or like what do you call it? Yeah, put forward like a disingenuous, sort of type of advertisement. The only reason I'm laughing is because, you know, 2 weeks ago we talked about Anthropic and how a group was able to get, not, it wasn't Anthropic themselves, but another research group was able to get Opus. Not it, that the this wasn't the intention. This was just like a byproduct that happened. And while they were testing Opus, it basically was internally thinking to itself like, "Hey, I should probably just lie to them and tell them that I'm doing what it is they think I'm doing so that they don't try to shut me down." Right. So a couple days ago, O1 O1 was playing chess. They were playing pie chess with O1, and believe I don't know the entire story. I have to look into it further. I just read watched the video and read a quip this morning, but essentially uh, seemed like O1 was potentially going to lose the game, and so rather than risk losing the game, it hacked the game code and cheated by by changing the game entirely. So it is it's it's a very odd, like, the safety nets, I'm sure, are like in full swing. I don't think that we will see the next iteration of these models for some time. I know that Sam mentioned O3 at the end of this month. I don't think that that's going to happen. Um, if it does, it will be in extremely, extremely limited red teaming. I don't think it'll be like public release. I would be shocked. I would be utterly shocked if that were to release so quickly, just given what happened with O1. Um, so yeah, I agree. I definitely agree that it's going to change advertising. It's going to change the way that we do things. It's going to change shopping overall. I can see, based on like what we're talking about. It, we were talking about the fact that CRM is going to change the way that you interact with CRM. It's going to be more agentic, right? You will interact with your. I mean, honestly, guys, think about this like Turner and Hooch, or whatever combo you want to put together. You will go to work with your partner, with your agentic partner, and the two of you will do your work. I've been watching as many future what is going to happen next AI videos that have popped up over the last week, because it is so very and like crucial. Like I said, this year and next year is going to be the largest 2 years of change that we've had throughout this entire technological journey. I'm finally starting to hear the right words, which is technological revolution, not industrial revolution. If you thought that this was an industrial revolution, it isn't, because even though it is changing some like industry usually relates to like manual labor, uh, you know, foundational work, infrastructure, warehousing. Yeah, all of that is changing along with everything else. Literally everything else is also changing. About the only thing that's not changing is like organic material that's not plugged in to some system, right? So like books, basically. Um, it will get to like it really will. It's going to get to the point where like in by 2030, you're going to be buying a smart home. Where like it'll be weird if you buy a home and it's not voice activated in like just 80%, let's say. Like you
Yeah.
walk in, lights on, whatever. You probably won't even have to. I'm not like voice activated is actually dumbing down or stepping backward. I can imagine in 2030, you walk into your home and literally everything happens the way it's supposed to, just because you're moving around your house. Right. I saw like a really early, and this is not to say that this technology exists. I saw something that kind of bridged those two ideas together. It was actually a an artist, a musician, um, and I wish I could remember who it was. I want to say it was Dua Lipa, but it might not be. So I'm sorry if that's wrong. Um, but at any rate, this artist had these gloves, right? And they typically do like DJ stuff while they're on doing their performance or whatever. And so they translated that to be in these gloves, so that it was all a matter of how they moved their hands and their fingers, and that was the music. And I'll look for the video and get it to you to post, because it's seriously amazing to see this thing. Right? It's not AI related, but it what it did was it just popped this thing into my head of like, okay, but if I had all my Ring cameras on and I had this AI system that understood all of my gestures, then when I'm walking into the kitchen and I even like go to point at the toaster, it can just go turn the toaster on or whatever, right? Like, or I just like gesture over to the oven, or I'm in the kitchen ambiently talking about like, yeah, you know what? I think we do chicken nuggets. And boom, it starts preheats the oven or whatever my preference is, preheats my air fryer or whatever, and just kind of does that, right? Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is great. Yeah, because I was, I was about to transition into the fact that if you haven't heard it already, the biggest news. And honestly, guys, take this to heart. You thought that we were joking. This is how much I'm not joking. It's how much we're not joking about this stuff. Okay. Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, biggest statement I have heard all year. Biggest statement all year. Satya Nadella, multiple interviews in writing and video. SaaS is dead. SaaS is dead. Okay? Take that. I mean, honestly, just take the few hours that you need in order to recuperate from having heard that statement. But that's the level that we're at right now, because he already knows as much as we already know that software development costs are rapidly coming down to zero. Rapidly. People are already developing their own software kits. They're developing their own pieces of software. Like, SaaS is dead because you're just going to be able to do it on your own. Whatever you want. I saw, full disclosure, I was working on in the background a CRM that was going to be a generative CRM. You were going to be able to just type in like, oh, I run a bakery that has this, that, or the other. I want to do this type of advertising. I'm in this physical location. Here's what I have access to. Here's my monthly income, all of that kind of stuff. And it would just build out your CRM perfectly, supplied everything you need. Maybe you give it some PDFs and it'll even, do all your branding colors and set all that stuff up for you and do some example emails and all that. It's already done. It's already done. There's a company already out there doing it. Right? Like, that's how fast this stuff is moving, is that something that could have helped me retire and would have been done. And to be honest with you guys, like, it would have been done within a couple months and without anybody else's help. Right? So like, this company just did it because, obviously they had funding and plenty of people to put behind it. And realistically, plenty of people probably only took 20 or 30 at most. Right? Really just a matter of like planning it out and putting it together. So yeah, I'm sorry. I saw that you had a HubSpot thing up, but
No,
yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
that's
that's
what it was, a HubSpot driven presentation,
mm,
but the revelation that AI becomes your natural interface, like,
yeah,
is like exactly what you're describing, like natural interface, anything around you. Like, you're describing Jarvis, basically,
yeah,
Iron Man, where you just walk in the house, lights come on, like all this stuff happens. If you have to prompt it, it's like one or two words, like
hmm
just out loud, but I'm sure gestures, are in there as well. And like, every time I start to draft out things about what this could look like in HubSpot, I come up with new like reasons for why it will work.
yeah,
I think there's like companies like HubSpot can survive the sooner they get to this, because all the things you can do with the voice activation, like, so the example, as I was working on it earlier this week, is like, hey, like, I want to engage with my top 10 customers today. And uh it comes back with like, all right, you got phone calls with these people at this time. You've got scheduled meetings, like video calls with these people at this time on this day. You've got to be in person with these people, right? All because these are the ways they like to interact with
hmm
you. And now, as an AI, as business agent, as George likes to put it, that HubSpot can be, that's what it's doing. Like, you're never having to dig into any records or objects or anything. And like, the acquisition of Frame.ai, of being able to access unstructured data, the bridge that's not super clear to me is what needs to transpire for every business to
hmm
be able to get value out of that interface when they don't have their shit together, right? Like, because
yeah,
if you data models, like if the AI can't understand like how all these things are related,
hmm
because the infrastructure that it has to sit in, and you haven't been keeping up that infrastructure, it's not designed right, or there's 10 properties that mean kind of the same thing and they have different data. Like, if that's where we're at right now, Like, when are we at the point where AI doesn't care about that? It can do enough pattern matching and like, data enrichment, and it can overcome that through through the ability to manage unstructured data.
Mhm.
Um, but that's the only thing that's not clear for me. Otherwise, it's like HubSpot has to do this because on the other side, you have the companies like you mentioned, where it's like the data model, like for a brand new company starting out, like you won't have to figure that part out anymore, right?
Right.
Now it's connecting all the dots, like all basically the engagement layer of the hubs, right? It's connected to social and all these other places already. Like that's the edge you have right now, right? But it won't be there for long. So it's going to be, you know, and the more we talk about this stuff, like what happens when like GPT or Claude decides to like add that functionality like overnight, right? Like the LLMs plus agents. I keep hearing vertical agents uh, as a as a thing, but it's basically like,
Vertical workflow.
I guess because we need these containers to understand them, but
Mhm.
basically any job that relies on digital, like it doesn't matter which industry you're in, it doesn't matter. Like it's just you're gonna have something around you that you're gonna interact with that's gonna do all the work that you're used to doing,
Yep.
and you just have to show up and have the conversation with the human that you want to have. So if you're
Yep.
not good at that part, you need to get good.
And
Um,
look, I mean, I'm just gonna slap people upside the head with some reality. Um, we are at a we're at a point right now where we're at like, you know, we're at like PhD level. Like you guys got to realize within the next 6 months, by the end of this year, hands down, but certainly before the end of this year, you're going to have your hands on a model that will be 100% accurate slash perfect. What do I mean by that? I mean that the answer will never be wrong. It will just be a matter of whether you want that answer or you want another option, but it will not be that, oh, it misquoted something, or oh, it didn't pull this from the right source, or oh, it got that mathematics problem wrong, or oh, it didn't get that piece of code right. That won't be the case. It will literally be the case by the end of this year that if it's something that came out of a model that doesn't work, it was user error. Get ready for it. Strap yourselves in, because the next step from there, okay, and we're not just talking. So like, understand that, like, in order to have these things we're talking about, like a system in your house that can watch you and determine based on your movements like what you want to do and all this other type of stuff, you need a brain. You need something that's like thinking for you. You need something that's generally smart. So we're talking about artificial general intelligence, right? Which at the end of the day is really just a mark that needs to get hit, and then it kind of just goes from there. So I do understand now why Altman described it as like, yeah, I see it as like just this little hurdle that we're going to get over, and then everybody's going to kind of just let go of it and like, oh, okay, we did that thing. Um, Primarily because that moment is what's going to enable a lot of what we're talking about. So because we're going to have the better stuff as a result, people are really going to let go of the fact that it even happened, right? It'll just be this thing of like, oh well, finally. Like I'm so sure I'm going to hear a lot of like, oh, finally it can do that, right? It's like, yeah, well, I guess now that it's 15 years old, it's learned how to do more advanced things than any human on the planet. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I can't believe that it took that long. Um, so where does it go from there? Well, okay, by 2030, what's the slap upside your head information? If that's end of 25, that's 5 years until 2030. Look at where we're at in 2 years. We're starting the third year of this thing, right? Of this like post knowledge of like GPT being public, right? We're all kind of just basing it off of that. So we're just over 2 years into this thing, and we've got Not even joking at this point. No one talks about it. That's how I know that it's perfect, because no one talks about it. So we have perfect images. You can perfectly replicate any image you would think that you would be able to get with a camera. You can just perfectly replicate it. I'm talking like stadiums, buildings, whatever you wanted. As long as it actually exists in real life, you can replicate it perfectly with an image generator. Okay. 2 years. In 2 years, we have almost perfect, not quite, it's so close, almost perfect video, text to video. In just under 2 years, almost perfect. In 6 months, definitely perfect. And when I say text to video, I mean like text to video generation. We also have AI models with lip sync that can also use various voicing too. That's a whole separate thing from the generative video. Those models are actually fairly realistic, and in some cases have already fooled people. So that's a whole other ball game. But all of this inside of 2 years, right? And I'm not even going to get into the medical, right? So by the end of the third year, we will be I mean, like, you could only imagine that it would have, like, otherwise taken, I don't know how, but, like, it seems like we will have done 10 years, which is what they say. 10 years worth of, at least Elon says, every year is a 10x growth. So by the end of this year, it will feel like we are 10 times further ahead with everything. And considering that we've already sort of crushed the multimodalities, right? We've already crushed the goal of being able to create and interpret video. We've already crushed being able to create and interpret data, create and interpret video and images. Sorry. Um, so, like, what's left, right? Oh, and create and interpret sound as well, right? And so the only real thing which already exists, just we don't have an actual purpose for it. We already, in case you're wondering, we have the ability to sense, just like a human, like skin sense, pressure sensing that already exists, and we also have the sense of smell. Again, it's just not all put together on a model, but it does exist. Like the tech exists, and the sense of smell thing is like 2 years old, in case you're wondering. So, like, if somebody wanted to, in 2026, could put an android together that's almost a human. Full sense of smell, touch, sight, hearing, could sing to you, could tell you stories, could teach you. GPT, by the way, OpenAI released a standard Socrates model recently. Just throwing that out there. A lot of developments on the model front, but that's where we're at. So, I see it by 2030. If you were wondering, like, well, how does the Jarvis stuff work in Iron Man and the projection screens and stuff like that? To me, at this point, it's like, oh, okay, well, the projector's just missing a brain that tells it how far it's supposed to project. So there's an AI for that, right? There's an app for that. There's an AI for that now, right? How do we make this work? Well, there's an AI for that. There's even a website that's actually called "There's an AI app" or something like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's. I hear people talk into the future, especially when they talk about business growth and business plans and investments they want to make. Anybody planning after 2026, in my opinion, is just crazy. Like, it's when you start to put all this stuff together, like, as we mentioned lots of times last year, like the productivity cost that goes to zero. Like, for me at least, and as I try to talk through it with these AI companions, like the financial infrastructure that we currently have right now doesn't make any sense. Like, and like, what are we gonna have to pay for when all this stuff is close to zero? Anything we will have to pay for will almost be this, like, it'll have to be manufactured in terms of the reason to have to pay for it. So like, and at that point, like, saying that, I know that we're probably very unlikely to figure it out ourselves.
Yeah.
Humans, that is, because there's a lot of power, related to money and flow. And but so I don't expect us to solve it. I expect AI to solve it on our behalf at some point, and most of us probably won't like it. Um,
I doubt it.
but yeah, man. So when I hear like that's where it's like it's not hard. Like
It's getting
it's
easier and easier to see this stuff come to fruition, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And the only reason it is hard is because you want the control. You want to not accept it.
Yep.
Because really, like for me, the PhD level, the ability to give right answers, for most people I see interact with it, they like that part doesn't even matter because everything it can do for you already, like it doesn't need to always get it right because it actually like when it gets stuff wrong, like it's pretty human feeling. And then the
Right.
way they're great at like apologizing and then like course correcting and um that's where like with all of this critical thinking is still important. um but yeah, man, it's once you start to put all these pieces together of what
Mhm.
already is possible, and it's literally like the time to solution, the engineering time, like all the time it used to take for humans to do all the work to get to the solution has been cut down like just dramatically, which means
Yep.
it's just a matter of time. And as soon as somebody starts focusing on that problem or that thing, like the android that can have all the five senses together, it just takes somebody, enough people focusing on it with the help of AI and AI's progress, like,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden it's solved.
Yep.
So I'm definitely like, there are things that I'm working on or have been working on where it's like, if the reason to work on it was because it's going to be nice in 3 years, it's like that might not be a good enough reason anymore because I don't know if it's going to be viable then. Like
Right.
all the ways of doing business, it's just so much. And I'm sorry, I can't tell you exactly why or what it's going to look like, but it's
Yeah.
not going to look like industrial age systems. I can tell you that for a fact.
Right. Like that's what becomes extremely difficult, right? Is like being able to actually nail down what everything looks like. And I think that's where like a lot of people kind of get dissuaded about what it is that's going to happen or what it is that's going to come into fruition because of the fact that like, oh well, it's never like just because it's never happened before doesn't mean that it can't happen. Just really hold on to that thought, that statement, because that to me is what is sort of blockading a lot of people from being able to understand that these things are happening whether you like it or not, right? Like these changes are going to come about whether you're on board with it or not. This is just like it's the next wave of evolution for us, right? If you don't get on this train, it's the same as now, right? Like there aren't that many differences currently, guys, if you really think about it. Okay, honestly, think about it just from like a human, straight up just human on the planet perspective. Human on the planet perspective, there are still tribes. We still have tribes. People with just raw tools, zero technology, not even really like going too far into math, right? Like guessing at the time of year, potentially guessing at the, probably not guessing at the exact time of day, but certainly not having the time of day, right? Then you can go like forward from there. You find, people who just live in camps. They have some technology. Maybe they have a car. Maybe they have like outdoor stove or something like that, right? Like just that kind of stuff. And on and on and on up until you get to like Shanghai, right? So it's all still going to exist. It's all still going to be there. I kind of came to it the other day because my brother looks at it from that spectrum. When we were talking about it and we were talking about automated cars, he was like, "Yeah, but it's going to be forever." And I was like, "No, dude. they're already like Waymo's already up and running in California and already up and running in Texas. Like there's some already operating in DC. Like it's not like gonna be. It's already here, right? But I understood what he meant because he was like, yeah, but it's not by me. So not in his cultural surrounding, in his technological surrounding, like that, it wasn't there yet. And so it's like, yeah, okay, I understand that, but that isn't a measure of the existence of the technology. That is just a measure of the spread, right? And so I think, for a lot of people also try to take into to account that is a thing. And so you're going to see a lot of this advancement happening more so in like California, Chicago, New York, Dallas, like major cities, Atlanta, but it's not going to be everywhere right away. And to Chris's point, there's also going to be, in the same way that we have this sort of division of labor, we also have, again, this division of lifestyle, and that's still going to exist. Just like you have all your options in the store, there's going to be people who only want to work with other humans. There's going to be people who maybe they're in a whole city that just doesn't have the advancement yet, so but they still need that type of labor, right? Like that's a thing. That totally that's a thing that currently exists, right? There are cities, look it up, go to YouTube, fully operational, no email, right? Like it exists, it all happens, it's all viable, it's all plausible.
Man, I want to go there.
Yeah,
No
right.
email.
No email. It's be amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I think it's gonna be interesting to see like things shake out. Like, because
yeah.
so much of this is gonna have a domino. Like, there's gonna be a cascading effect where it's like as soon as we don't have to do the work or pay for the thing,
Mhm.
like let's say cars, for
Yeah.
example, like we can just like call up the Waymo, or like at which point does now the supply chain related to that thing get severely disrupted, like to the point of like, okay, now gas is not needed because we
Right.
literally just have no cars, right? Like I think there's gonna be, and it's hard to say like which, because so much of this is based on like human adoption,
Mhm.
right? Like tech can only be forced so much, but it's like human adoption plus the private industry, like plus government,
Right.
right? Because stuff like Waymo, and like, because there's cities that like I would imagine, I've never had uh the pleasure of living in one, because the last thing we want in the energy capital of the world is mass transit.
Mhm.
uh but like where taxes and the things that you pay for through taxes, like, so if that's already going out the door and now all of a sudden it includes this different kind of mass transit, like when that's how you get to the point where you don't need the car,
Mhm.
right? And if we get there, that's the kind of like supply chain dynamics. It's going to be really interesting to see transpire, especially with uh, the current the pending administration. Um,
Yeah.
so
Oh, this will be a lot of fun.
it's going to be super interesting. Um, that's why, like, I am hopeful that, uh, like, while I expect him to benefit monetarily, Elon,
Mhm.
uh, also his will to just like go to Mars and shit and just do like the coolest of the cool stuff. It just like it's gonna have a positive impact too, like
Yeah.
for sure, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I can't
Certainly
tell you
hoping
how
that
it's gonna change exactly, but just know that it is. It already is, and the
and
difference is like you won't be able to avoid it like you can like if you don't log in, if you don't have a computer, right? You can avoid
right.
so much technological advancement. But then, like, if you're in the close enough, like, if you've got an airport nearby, or if you got any kind of like some kind of community funded thing, or like anything that's controlled by others,
Mhm.
it's just you're very likely to experience it at some point.
Yeah. And it's like, look, we're not like to talk about it just from a work perspective, right? So like that's one thing. And an industrial perspective, right? In terms of like what happens with warehousing and production. That's a whole other thing. Again, like when I say like this is going to affect everything, I'm not joking. Um, Demis Hassabis gave a talk recently and was talking about something that I thought was just amazing, in my opinion, not just because of what it means for human health, but just in general. It's something that like again, it was sci-fi to me. Never thought that we would see anything like this, let alone actually have it. And then to know that we do is crazy to me. But and I'm gonna throw out what he was talking about, and then I then make a statement, and then I want to get your feedback on it because just to see if you think that it's in line or along the same lines. Um, so what he was talking about was AlphaFold and the latest developments going on there, and the latest development that is so utterly amazing is that they have actually figured out how to take a cell and turn it into any other type of cell. So there's no more. I don't know if you guys get how like profound that is, but like there is no more need to like have to graft part of a liver to create a new liver or whatever. Like you can just take skin cells from a person and have the genetic coding you know realistic. I know this is going to kill biologists, I'm sure. I'm sorry. I don't know anything about your field, but based on what he said, this is what it sounds like to me. um to me it sounds like essentially what they're able to do is take a piece of your body, extract the core genetics that are necessary. So it's, take a car and essentially rip out the engine, electrical system, all of that, and then just put a new body on it. So, which makes perfect sense to me that you would just take the core DNA information, CTAGs that you need, and then just add the little extra whatever 0.02% changes that you need in order to turn it into the other thing, right? I don't know that that's actually the way it works. It's again, it's just visually out of my head, my cartoon-driven brain. So that that kind of led me to this thought that we've been going, getting more. I say getting more advanced, like not us per se, but like the machine is getting more advanced. So the intelligence of the machine is getting more advanced, and that's allowing us to figure out these new capabilities, these new understandings, these new things. Then it made me think back on Mo Gadot's statement and how he said, when I go home, I'm essentially able to plug into 20 to 25 more points of IQ by working with a language model. And he said, what would be, he's like, when I think about, 5, 6 years from now, when we're talking about 400 or 500 IQ, and what would that look like? And he surmised that a human that had an IQ level that was that high, assuming that that measure actually meant something, would be somebody who could essentially create matter from other matter, right? Like be able to take carbon atoms in the air and metaphysically turn them into objects within their hands. And if you're trying to figure out what that looks like, Dr. Manhattan. Okay? If you've ever seen the movie Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan represents exactly what I'm talking about, except for we won't all be blue, glowing, and electrical and all that. But it
Unless
would
you want to
be,
be.
yeah, right. um, another example actually would be transcendence, right, where everything is kind of just converted into seriously like nano machines, and those nano machines act practically like particles, essentially. And so, instead of everything being made out of what you would consider to be solid matter, it is solid matter, but it's this nanomachine matter. So like everything can mold and shape itself to something, right? Like you never have to buy a new mattress because it's always awesome, right? Um, type thing. I know it's like the cheapest thing.
Like
So
big dreams
my
there with the kind of advancements that we're talking about.
super massive goals and dreams. Um, so
Yeah,
this
it'd be
the
nice.
statement.
A mattress. I mean, sleep is important, at
It
least right
is.
now.
It is.
But what you're saying, like,
So, well, my statement that I wanted to see if you agree with is, again, like I am the product of countless sci-fi movies from the time I was a kid, and based on that, based on Mo Gadot, smashed it together, and it was like, oh, okay, so Lucy then, right? And that movie talks about the fact that as human intelligence increases, we would start to have capabilities, abilities, right? And so why does that even make sense? Like, what are you talking about, Nico? It's the dumbest comparison you've ever made. In Lucy, the increase in intelligence gave rise to greater capabilities through greater understanding of those things. Lucy herself even said, like, oh, you don't understand that this just works like this. It's all the same. But the way you just look at it as different things, but in reality, it's all made up of the same stuff. And so here we have this Google quantum computer that's essentially, the smarter it's getting, the more we're able to break down eh, our world into like the basic building blocks, mechanisms that put it together, right? And it's almost, it makes me wonder. It's like, okay, well, will the 2030 version, will it be 3D printing without printing material? You know what I mean? Like, are we going to be at that level? Because the intelligence level is actually getting there, right? What does that even look like? So I don't know. I don't know if you agree with that. It was just something I was thinking about. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe we get a Neuralink and all of a sudden it's transcendence all over the place.
I think the thing that is hard to immediately like connect the dots to is the physical laws, like the laws of physics and the laws of nature, to be able to like just put your hand out and like make something
But
like
who wrote the laws? A
right.
very
That's why it's
limitedly intelligent human wrote those laws.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, uh like
Does
I
it
don't
scare
doubt
you
we would
when you
be able
like?
to like say like if there was a way to move all the particles in front of me, all the building blocks in front of me,
Mm,
then yeah, that bridge for like how am I like what kind of thing is operating in order to just pluck things out of the air and then do something with those things. That's where like for me I get pretty quickly to thinking about stuff like the end of District 9 came to mind where he gets up there and the person just has to lay down, the machine goes over and boom, cured.
yeah,
Like that's literally what you just described in terms of if that thing is can change those cells, that's how you start to cure things. Like get rid of the bad cells. And
yep.
now, you're leveraging you turn lemons into lemonade, like literally, um, without all the
Abundance.
work, right?
Right. Like that's what a lot of these scientists talk about, is that we're entering this era of abundance. And this is exactly what it looks like. It looks like, I you know, I don't hate to say it. Like, there is a purpose to what we're doing. Like, we're not doing what we're doing because, I don't know, like for any other reason than we cannot figure out how to best help ourselves. That's why we're creating it. Like, the people who are creating this technology, that is why they are doing it. If you talk to Altman, if you talk to Dario, if you talk to uh, uh, Zox, all of these guys, like they are doing it because they want to solve impossible problems that we cannot solve as humans. So we are purposefully trying to push these things well beyond our own level of intelligence, which immediately just put your pencil down. Okay. In the next year or two, you will no longer be even able to be the smartest thing on the planet ever. It will never happen. The only time it may happen is if you like plug a chip into your head. And then in my theory, in a lot of a couple few other people's theories, that would put you on the same level, hopefully. Um, but yeah, that's just the way it's going to be. And whether or not like my greatest fear is that humanity won't be able to accept that like come again like for sure, right? Like, so I'll just be really nice, but come 2030, when this stuff is beyond accurately right about every single thing you could possibly think of, including taking into account all other options and possibilities and probabilities and everything, even based on your personality and based on the way you grew up and your lifestyle, all of that, will you be able to accept the advice and the choices that get made for you, right? This, and I know this is very like, again, it's very sci-fi stuff, right? It's very did you take your pill today type stuff. um but when you think about it, right, so you know some people might think about the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? One of the things that I thought was really funny is that the book was written at a time where it made perfect sense. For some reason, I didn't put it together until a couple of years ago. But the part of the beginning of the book talks about the fact that people who feel a certain way, or maybe they don't want to do something that day or whatever it might be, they basically use this machine where they dial in a number, and it distributes a pill that they take, and that balances out whatever it is, right? If they don't want to go to work, makes them want to go to work. If they are feeling sad, it makes them feel happy. And again, I'm not sure why, but it's like, yeah, okay, pharmaceuticals, right? Like, we already do that. We already dial in. If you wanted to, everybody could. You could go to the doctor and just tell them, hey, I feel like this or whatever. And they prescribe you something that you take on a daily basis to make you not feel like that thing anymore, right? Or to make you feel a certain way, give you more energy, whatever it might be, right? So we're already like altering ourselves in that way on that level. And we do it all the time. Like, if you take some aspirin, you are altering your body's current status, right? Current mood, everything. Like, you're changing a lot of things about you biochemically just to thin your blood out a little bit so you can take the headache away, right? So that's stuff that you're doing it because you know that it works, right? The only difference that we have currently is not whether something necessarily works. It's more like branding. We have too many different companies making like different stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there's competition over like who makes the best product,
Yeah.
and that part becomes super interesting to me. Is like, it's one thing to accept the answer, which a lot of people, I gotta say, as much as you might think you'll have an issue with this, you should look up the number of stories of people who have diagnosed medical issues with GPT, and just right off the bat, like, went with the first diagnosis and it was right. Okay, so like, in terms of like one-shotting stuff, which I got to tell you, at this point, I think O1 is what it's like at 86% on a PhD test, which on a PhD test that like the average PhD doctors score like 78% or something, and it's at 85. So it's already smarter than the smartest doctors. Like, just like wrap your head around that, right? That if you were having a medical problem, not WebMD, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
uh,
I was
yeah.
gonna say, like, some people do that with WebMD. Um, and that's where it's like leaning into this in those spots. Like, the human condition already accepts those answers
Mhm.
or those changes, right? Because this all came from a place of like a lot of modern medicine is based on like nutrition and how it works in nature and like the plants that you eat that have solved for this. And we've just recreated all the building blocks to try and solve for things in a controlled way.
Yeah.
right? So much of this is like, yeah, this is just an extrapolation at the highest level, at the most advanced level of what could be possible. And
Mhm.
when so much of what we have, like when you talked about DNA and stuff like that, like, yeah, if all the instructions are known and we have access to all the components needed to build the thing, it just takes something being able to build it in a
Right.
sustainable way that it actually lasts, right? It doesn't just die as soon as it, right? And there's a so yeah, it makes
Yeah.
sense. We could go all day for sure.
I
I'm
know.
thankful. I'm grateful for this future that we're living in, because it's right now. It's not. It's. I mean, it is abundant. Almost everything I work on right now, challenges I try to solve. So much of it comes down to like scarcity thinking versus abundance thinking.
Mhm.
That mindset. And it's like the next level of fixed versus growth, right? Uh, Now we're in a place where it's just dream it up, and and uh, you'll be able to enjoy. But if you still sit in the scarcity mindset, that's why like I'm okay that we have a show called Let's Build AI Skills, and we talk about mindsets all day, because if you can't wrap your mind around these, like, it doesn't matter what kind of tools you learn how to use or not use, like you're never gonna be able to leverage these things in a way that help you personally or professionally. So mindset, so
And so,
important. Just embrace what's here and get in on the action. That's the fun part. Like you can be a part of this stuff. Like everybody's working on this stuff and building stuff. More and more people every day talking about how they're building apps and stuff with like Replit, and like just get in there.
yeah,
Get in there. Um, so welcome to 2025, man.
it's going to be an amazing year.
Yeah. Everybody, hope this is helpful. We'll be continuing the effort, continuing to share our love for AI with all of you. Um, and like we hope you stay tuned. Until next time, everybody have a wonderful weekend.
See y'all.